right. Hey guys, I am the Blue Bodie, and holy hell, do I have an amazing Bodieverse for you today. So, our first in person guest of this season, you didn't know that, did you, Travis? You're my first in person guest this year,
Woohoo!
is someone that I have come to adore. And I'm not gonna lie, I got like a little giggly after he agreed to come on the Bodieverse. So, I have my wonderful friend Travis Holt here, Travis Warrior Unicorn. I feel like it has to have the growl when I say it. So, I was going to read your cute little spiel, but I would rather hear it in your terms. Like, tell us a little about you and how long you've known that you are this amazing soul and all of that. What made you step out and start doing what you do?
Well, first of all, thank you for those beautiful compliments and thanks for having me here at the Bodhiverse. I'm so excited and just so grateful to spend some time here today. I think like a lot of people, I understood that I had a connection to spirit at a young age, right? Before any of the trauma or before any of the matrix programming or any of that kind of had its chance to, get into my brain and my mind, right? And so it really started to slowly unfold for me throughout my early 20s and into my late 20s. Like I would get drunk and be like, oh my God, let me read your tarot cards. Or I would, you know, it always involved me being drunk at first, right? And then I would be at like a date's house and be like, my house is haunted. And I'd be like, I know there's three spirits here, right? Like, and so it started like that. And then, as some time went by and I started to do some healing work. And then when that tiny incident of 2020 came around,
Oh, no. Yeah.
small incident, right? Like a lot of people, I used that time at home I quit drinking, I started meditating, I started connecting in with myself. And then eventually it was like, oh, holy smokes, all of these things when I was a kid are coming back, right? The only difference
Right.
is when you're a kid, you think that that is just a completely normal experience because it is,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I remember being a kid and I would be at my grandmother's house and we would play with the Ouija board and she had this book room that I would go into and there'd be all these different books about like ancient sorcerers and witches and things like that. And now that I'm an adult, it all makes sense. At the time as I was a kid, I was like, oh, Granny's got some cool shit. And then, but
I
so
mean, I'm not
so
going to lie. I kind of want to go hang out at your grandma's house.
yeah, well, the house is gone and Granny's a non-physical, but all of those great memories live on here for sure.
Yes.
And so as I started to do my shadow work and I started to dive into those parts of myself that desperately needed love and light and belonging, my connection to spirit just started to expand with my expansion. And I didn't set out with the intention to be a psychic medium. That was like the furthest thing from my mind. I still had a corporate job. I was very much on this like track with my career. I'd started business school. I was wanting to be the VP of sales for the company I was working for. And one summer day in 2020, after I'd gotten sober from alcohol, I sat down and I made a list, and I don't know what prompted me to do it. It was something that came, well, I know now it prompted me to do it, right? But at the time I had no idea. I'm just in a meditation. I'm like, oh, I should make a list of everything I want, right? Like,
Right.
totally random, not spirit at all, right? Totally random, totally sarcastic there.
I mean, it
But
just is what it is.
I sat down and I wrote a list of everything that I wanted from my life. I wrote down at the very top, I want to be happy. I wrote down I wanted time freedom, I wanted money freedom, I wanted to help people, I wanted to feel good. And from the time I started that list, there just came this massive unfolding. And then I lost my job, like I think like 2 months after I made that list, which was amazing. Like when that role was eliminated just because of budget cuts, because of the panini, The pandemic, I just,
I like that
I,
word better.
yeah, I don't know what the algorithms like to pick up with that. So I'm like, I try to like not use the
Yeah,
word just
yeah.
in case, you never know. So, so, that role was eliminated, and they offered me, I could either stay and take a different role or I could leave. And so something within me was like, leave. And I just left, and I didn't have a job. I didn't have a plan. I'm just ass to the wind. And then, no, this was at the end of September. It was September 30th of 2020. And then in the end of October, beginning of November, sometime around there, I get on TikTok, and I had learned the John Holland Psychic Oracle deck, like front and back. And
Mhm.
I get on TikTok, and I'm doing a live, and there's like 4 people in this live that I'm like talking to, 4 of my closest friends on TikTok. And someone was like, I've had a really bad day. And do you have any words of inspiration or anything? And so I was like, I'll give you a tarot reading. And so I pull out the John Holland Oracle Tarot or Psychic Oracle deck, and I start doing readings. And the next thing you know, I've got 1,500 people in this live, and I had never experienced anything like that.
Holy shit.
No, yeah. And I was like, I wasn't like a professional tarot reader or anything like that. And then, but I did these readings, and then people wanted private readings. And so I was like, I guess we're doing this. And so I
This is what
started
we're doing now.
studying. Yeah, I started studying, worked with a mentor, and it feels like it's been so long, but it's really just only been close to 3 years professionally of doing. It'll be 3 years in November professionally doing readings. And I get to wake up every day. I'm happy. I have time freedom. I have money freedom. I get to help people. Like everything from that list came true.
I
And
love
so
that.
yeah, so that's kind of how we wound up here.
Here's what's so funny when you talk about like 2020 and the shutdown and all those things. I know 90% of the people that I talk to were like, oh, it was like the worst time of my life and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm like, it was like fantastic for me. Like it was
Yeah.
fantastic for me because just like you, like I had a big girl job and I felt like I was just working to pay insurance and it was horrible. And I had a essential job. So I still had to go to work. And
Yeah.
it got to the point where they decided to restructure some things and my job wasn't going to be eliminated because I was in purchasing. So like I
Mm,
literally got paid to shop, but it was for things that I didn't really care about, like
yeah.
padding for carpet, things like that. But yeah, that whole, I mean, just like you, the universe was like, hey, here's this. I had already been doing this for a long time. So I had a big girl job and I did this on the side. And so I think it's really interesting that you had a very similar experience where the universe was like, all right, you know what? Like, here's your break. Here is your
Yeah.
break. And I love that you recognized it because so many people don't recognize when the universe is like,
Yeah.
look, I'm trying to give you everything you need right now to go forward. And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna stay back here. Like the pigs are in the mud and I want to be there. So I also love that you mentioned shadow work because today we're going to talk about shadow work. We're going to talk about raising your vibe and we're going to talk about like what happens when some of those old traumas start to like peek back up over the hedge. Like, what's up, bitch? I'm right here. So I want to talk about shadow work first because I feel
Mhm.
like that is kind of what goes into
Mhm.
all of this stuff, all of your own vibe and shifting, changing, recognizing things. Um, I personally I've been teaching shadow work since like 2014.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm going to ask your what happened and got you into it. For me, it was like I've always had a really interesting life. I've probably been doing it much longer than that, but
Mhm.
I lost my mom and then almost lost my sister within like a month of each other.
Mm.
And so that right there was like, and here we go. Like this is what we're doing now. So I found that in teaching shadow work and helping people with shadow work, it helps me with my own. So
Mhm.
what shoved you into shadow work? Because it's never like, hey, let's just start shadow work. It's like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the day. So I had started therapy before before 2020. I'd started therapy in like 2019 of that year. I just knew something was wrong. Like I knew that something within me just was off.
Right.
And now I know it was me running out of old programs, old wounding, old traumas. And it was my energy's way of being like, yo, bitch, you need to get some shit together, right?
Yeah.
And so I started therapy not really kind of knowing. I just knew that I wanted to be better. I knew that there was a different way. I didn't know what that looked like. And so I sat down in therapy, and first couple of therapy sessions, it was like, it was like my stand-up comedy routine hour, right? I'm like, let's see how many times I can make my therapist laugh with my trauma.
Right.
And
I mean, trauma is humor
right.
is a trauma response.
And then it really wasn't until June, we're coming up on 3 years. The last time I drank 2 bottles of vodka,
Ooh.
Kettle One grapefruit and rose. And
Isn't it funny the things we remember like that?
yeah. And before that, it had been like, a couple of day bender on alcohol. Because for me, alcohol was always the thing that I used to numb that pain or numb that loneliness, or that big kind of empty feeling that I think sometimes we all get.
Yeah.
And so I remember I woke up on my floor hungover. I'd made a total ass of myself in front of friends the night before. And I had been to lower places physically. Like I've been in, I went to the drunk tank 3 times, had, like I've been to court a couple of times for drinking and driving, and I laugh about that because nobody was hurt. Just side note, like that's, and so drinking and driving is very serious, for sure. But I had been to worse places, but emotionally, that was my rock bottom. I was laying on the floor and I had this realization that I was drinking with the intention to, if I just drank enough, I wouldn't wake up. And so for me, emotionally, that was like the bottom. And I was laying on my floor and I heard this very distinct voice that says, if you don't quit drinking, you will die. And I grew up with a dad who had challenges with alcohol. My parents owned a bar. Like alcohol is just like been around my life forever, right? And it's a very common substance that's out there, right? Like alcohol is there, and I'm definitely not condemning alcohol. For me, I've just never been the, hey, let's go for one drink kind of guy. Like one drink turns to 6, turns to shots, turns to going out, turns to maybe a 2-day bender. Who knows? And so that was the moment where I was like, you know what? It's time to do some work. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just sat, and something within me was like, start meditating. And I did. And I'd never meditated. I just sat and I just breathed. And I just got this knowing that it was time to quit drinking. And I tried to quit before. Never worked. Did AA, did all the things, and just it never worked. And then, but something in that moment was like, this is it. You can do this. And I lined up to it vibrationally that it was time to quit. And I did. That was the day that the real, quote unquote, shadow work began, or at least intentionally began.
Yeah. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud of me too. And I'm
no
proud
one
of
has
you.
told you that today. Like that's amazing. I hate that you fell into that, but I love that we're talking about that, because especially with shadow work, and I'm sure that you have found this in working with people too. I have just found over the years that people that have very intense gifts tend to fall into something that they can use to numb that gift. And it's usually alcohol or substances, because at first, when you're a kid and you have these great gifts, you're like, oh, yeah, because you're born with them. They open up, and then everybody shuts them down. You're weird. We don't talk about that. You sounds like you had a grandma that like stoked those things in you. So, and I'm sorry you lost her. Then you get to this point where it's like, okay, this isn't normal, quote unquote. So now I have to kind of like rein it back or pull it in. And a lot of people that had very hard parents, like especially with religion, whatever religion it is, where it was like, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. You shut those off, but they're still there, and you still have all those things. And especially people that are extremely empathic. Alcohol and substances are a way to shut that off.
Mhm.
So I love that we started talking about that, especially with shadow work, because I feel like that's something that so many people relate to. I grew up with a dad, a biological father, who I never saw. He would call just slobbery drunk, and I never wanted to drink. And I'm also diabetic, so I can't drink. But yeah, that's stupid. But so my way of numbing that, I throw myself into work. Like I still do it now. Like I'm
Mhm.
calling my own
Mhm.
self on my own bullshit right now. But I threw myself into work as a way of working through some of the shadow aspects I was dealing with. So
Mhm.
painting, writing. I was a professional gamer for a long time. And so when you're gaming for 70 to 80 hours a week, like you're laser focused in what you're doing. So I don't have time to think about that. Now I have
Yeah.
time to think about that I'm in a house that's like 100 years old and I know there's someone upstairs, even though I'm alone, like I don't have time to think about that. Like I'm busy, like don't fuck with me, I'm busy. So I love that. I love that we're talking about that. Um, with shadow work, I think it's interesting too that you mentioned that it's almost like your gift pulled you out of that. Like someone that was
Mhm.
around you was like, okay, I love you and I need you to get better. Um,
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that because I hear that so much from people and they're like, you're going to think I'm crazy. I'm like, baby, you are absolutely not crazy. Like you are
Yeah.
so far from grippy sock vacation crazy. It's all right. So I love that you said that. So that way when people are listening to this, they can go, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about how that that dark time, especially with you, affected your vibration. Like
Mhm.
we all know that whenever we get to a very low point, our vibe is in the dirt. Like it's probably lower than the dirt.
Mhm.
How do you feel that epiphany you had affected your vibe? Do you feel like it was almost like
Yeah.
an instant shift, or did it take you a little bit for that to start really shifting?
Yeah. So I had at this time I had no idea about vibration, energy, none of that. Like and it wasn't until I started diving into psychic work and mediumship and studying and all of that where I learned about vibration and energy, right? Like the only thing I knew, which I think a lot of people just kind of come to this conclusion, even if you don't understand vibration or energy, they just understand they don't feel good
Yeah,
and I want to feel better.
right.
And and I think sometimes like even that as a starting place is enough. It certainly was for me. Um, but looking back now, understanding that if you would have asked me when I was in the thick of my drinking, if I had a problem or an awareness that it was potentially a problem, right? You had mentioned overworking, and I do
Yeah,
that sometimes as well. Or sometimes I'll soothe with food. The difference now is though, is that I know that's what I'm doing.
yeah,
Whereas me at that time, no idea. I'm just
yeah,
like grabbing alcohol without really an awareness as to why I'm doing it. I just know that the alcohol is making me feel different than I was feeling. And so I'm just going to do the alcohol, not knowing that it was numbing, not knowing that
yeah,
it was soothing. Right.
yeah,
And so, but, looking back and understanding the importance of quitting, it gave me that space to, one, be more in my body and understand that alcohol was masking feelings of loneliness, was masking anger, was masking sadness, was masking shame. But I needed that version of myself to go through all of that so I could be who I am now.
right. So
And
you've only been, so you said that was like 2020, so
Mhm.
or 2019. And which one? I'm sorry.
20 2019, I started therapy.
Okay.
June of 2020 is when I quit alcohol and the deep
Okay.
work began. Yeah.
Gotcha. So your vibe has kind of gone from like here to like through the roof in a short amount of time then.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing when you're a spiritual practitioner and it's kind of what you do for work. I don't know about you, but like, me being a Virgo, my Virgo shirt
I
that I
love
wore
that you wore your
today,
Virgo shirt too.
just
My
so
Capricorn self
everyone,
wore black.
just so everyone knows I'm a Virgo. But, I think, it, I want to be the very best and one of the very best for myself. And one of the things that I understood very quickly, and I had a great mentor who was like, please understand that in order for you to be the best that you want to be, you have to do your own work.
Yeah.
And you see it in practitioners. You see the practitioners that are doing the work, right? That are doing their shadow work, doing their healing, checking themselves, have a conscious awareness of themselves. And then you see the ones who, and not just in spiritual work, in a lot of professions, just a lot of wounding walking around.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
never
yeah.
wanted to be that person, because we're dealing with other people. We're
Yep.
dealing with other people and their stuff, right? And the very best way that I can serve spirit and serve others is by serving myself first.
Exactly. Oh, I love that you said that. That's one of the things that I tell people all the time on my lives is that, and in readings and so on, I'm like, I want you to pretend that you're on an airplane. I mean, even if you've never been on an airplane, you've heard them talk about you have to secure your mask first,
Yeah.
because you can't help anybody else if you are on the floor.
Yep.
And so I love that you mentioned that, because I think, and this is something that a lot of people deal with, women especially, but men to a different level, is that we're told we have all of these other responsibilities before us, whether it's taking care of our family, it's our job, it's our career, it's kids, it's this, it's this, it's this. And our self kind of goes last.
Yeah.
And then we're told at the same time, but you have to do self-care and you have to take care of yourself. Then it goes back around, you do self-care and you're selfish. And so people struggle with that. And they're like, well, I don't know where to be with this.
Yeah.
And especially people that their kids go to college, they no longer have little kids to take care of, or they retire, or whatever it is. Suddenly you don't have all of these things that were your life. They're not, you don't have to worry about them anymore. So they go through this withdrawal with it, where they think, oh my God, like what am I going to do? And they take on all this other crap. This is why you see a lot of retirees like fall into volunteering so much that people are like, you're going to kill yourself volunteering, or people take on, women especially, take on way too much with whatever. So I love that you mentioned that, because it's something that it comes up a lot with people, and they feel selfish in doing that. So what is your take on that? And we're going to talk about, and then I want to talk about reemerging traumas, because we've kind of pointed on that a little bit too. Like, did you notice after leaving corporate America that you had a little bit of withdrawals?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had always identified myself with my job, which I think a lot of people do. We're taught to, when you meet someone, what's one of the first questions you ask them? What do you do?
Yep.
What do you do? Right. And I'm definitely not criticizing that, but it is definitely something in our society that is like so common to just identify ourselves with our job or our work. And so, we carry those as our labels or our boxes that we fit in. And then when you take that away, then it's like, what do I have? Because, in growing up, and I think a lot of people who have gifts, we're told, oh, you're too sensitive. And that sensitivity is your guidance. It's your knowing that you're on the right path, or maybe you're off the path, and here's how we kind of get back, right? And so, but we're taught to ignore that. We're taught to ignore that sensitivity, right? And so, and that sensitivity, it's the best gift, because that tells us who we are. Not our job, not our stuff, but like, I'm Travis, but Travis is just a walking meat suit. Right? Like, and so, now when people ask, like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I exist.
I love that.
I exist. That's
My
literally
answer
what
is,
I
what
do.
do I not do?
Yeah, like
What do
I
I not do?
exist. And I know that sounds kind of funny to people, but it's like, it's like that's what I do. I mean, if you want to talk about what I do for work, that's great, but like, that's what I do. And so I think that over identifying with our roles in society is what leads us kind of further away, right? Because we have all of these systems. You were talking about women for sure, right? Like to identify as the role as mother, caregiver, housekeeper, whatever that,
Yeah.
whatever that society has told you to align with. And then with men, it's, don't listen to your sensitivity. You have to align with this, you have to align with that, right? And we see that even in, in the gay community, that you have to be a certain way or this certain way, right? And the thing is that it's a trick. It's a trick to make us think that if I identify with this label or title or box and I secure myself to it. I'm not saying that labels or boxes are bad. I'm saying it's when we entrench ourselves so deeply in it that that's who we are, then, what we've done is we've just separated ourselves from ourselves. And then none of us feel like we belong, because we don't feel like we belong because we're identifying with something that isn't true. But if we can find that connection back to self, we belong. And we see that the world actually is designed for us, and that the world is a place that we can be safe in. It's when we're identifying with these labels or these boxes where we don't feel safe, because it's not who we are.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And I think that's something that young people struggle with, even worse today. Like I remember struggling with it when I was younger too, but I think it's even worse today because those labels, we hate them, but we have to have them at the same time. Like it's the same in corporate America, where somebody gets a promotion, but they don't really get any extra money, but they've got a title. They've got a title and business cards, and how exciting is that? And we pin ourselves on that. And so I think that also affects the vibe that you put out too, because if you are just ironclad, this is who I am, then that's the vibe you put out. And it may not even be the vibration that you are back here. And then you start to morph into that vibration. Like you get to the point where that's exactly who you are. And you can't, it's like being pigeonholed. You can't get out of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point, because when we get stuck in these boxes or we get stuck with these labels, and then when you decide like, I want to do something different, it can feel almost, there's like this kind of like when I left corporate America and I was in beauty for a long time, and that's just how people knew me, right? And then then I come out of the broom closet as a psychic medium, and then then people are having a hard time identifying me, but I'm having a hard time identifying me, because I'm like, well, psychic medium isn't really like, it hasn't really sunk in yet, and I know I'm not in beauty anymore. It's like, what do I do? Who am I? What? And the shadow work piece helped me find that kind of that sense of belonging with myself, because shadow work is just, it's that loving those parts of ourselves that we have deemed unlovable. And so in that, if you were to take away my title of psychic medium tomorrow, I'd be all right. Like I'd be fine. It's all right, because it's my job, and it's something I love doing, and I love helping people, right? But I'll always help people regardless of what you call me. And that was like the common thread in all of my jobs. I've always been of service to others, and that's like my mission here. And so I don't care what you call me. It doesn't matter my job title. As long as the check clears, that's all I care about. But
right.
No, but
those
that's
first
it. But,
two things or three things on your list.
But I think to your point though, is that kids that are coming, the kids that are being born into this world now, they're having a hard time with it because it does not resonate for them. They're coming in with this strong knowing of like boxes and labels, totally cool, right? Because our brain needs them, and we're not going to escape. You're like, I don't live with labels. I'm like, that's a lie. We all do. But
right. Yeah.
It's not attaching to the label. And I think that's why kids are having such an interesting time. But I think they're going to really change things, because they're coming in not attaching to the labels.
Right.
We've got a society that has kind of forced you to attach to them, but they're not attaching to them. They're like, I don't care about that label. You can do whatever you want with it. So
Yeah.
I think it's a
Yeah.
great time.
I do too. I really love talking to, working with, etc. Some of the kiddos that have come into kind of my circle as I've been rotating around stuff. And I think that especially the younger kids, I'm gonna say under 18,
Mhm.
especially teenagers, they are way more intelligent and way more in tune with things than people give them credit for. And I think a lot of that, people say, oh, well, they spend too much time on social media and blah, blah, blah. They do, but they're so connected and in tune with everything going on. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And so when I was in college, really is when the internet became like, oh God, I'm old. When the internet like really became a big thing. So our way of social networking was to go outside and like holler up the street, you know, and see if so and so was want to go for a bike ride or go to school or go to an event.
Mhm.
So I understand both of those things, but
Mhm.
I feel like as a kid I wasn't as in tune with the things going on in the world because I didn't care to sit down and watch the news. My parents also didn't really watch the news. They read the paper.
Mhm.
Well, I would like the comics. Like I don't want to read the paper. I would like the comics, but I wasn't connected. But yet kids today, it's everywhere. It's on every social media app. It's in everything that they do. They're just bombarded with news. And so I think that it makes them so much more intelligent and so much more in touch. But I think that's also where the anxiety and the depression comes from in a lot of them, is because they are so bombarded with news and the vast
Mhm.
majority of it is just terrible shit. So of course, if that's all you see, that's where you're going to be. So I think that that's why a lot of the younger generation doesn't and can't, I think can't's a better word, adhere to a lot of those labels and make them like
Mhm.
ironclad in themselves, because they're like, well, why would I do that if this is just going to happen? Or why
Mhm.
would I do that if this is actually going on? And so that brings me kind of to this question. So when you're helping someone, when you're talking to someone, whether it's a friend, a client, or even just yourself, and you realize that you're kind of falling down that anxiety or that depression, and your vibration is like doing this, like rock bottoming.
Mhm.
First of all, what do you do? What do you do when you are talking to someone and trying to help them? Like what is Travis's tips on helping to kind of pull yourself out of that shit?
Yeah, I had to learn, and I'm so thankful that I learned this, is that, you know, yes, I'm a healer. I have literally never healed one person. My only job is to hold the highest vibration that I possibly am able to in that moment. And if that person can take it or align with it, great. But it's not my job to heal someone. It's not my job to fix them. And and that's the thing that was really hard for me. That was a boundary for myself that came up during my own shadow work was, I'm like Captain Save-A-Ho. And like I want everyone to feel good, even if that means I feel bad.
Yeah,
And what I had to learn for just the sake of my own energy, the sake of my own mental health is that, unless it's something that I have caused or done to another human that requires me to apologize or um be on that vibrational level with them or whatever it is, right? If it's something that I haven't caused, I haven't done, it's not my responsibility. I'm just the listening ear, I'm the practitioner, I'm the friend, whatever. Lowering my vibration to meet them or allowing my energy to spiral with them is not going to help either of us. It would be like
right,
if my friend or client jumped in a tar pit and then I jumped in to help them out, right? It
right.
doesn't mean though that I spiritual bypass their problems either, because we see a lot of that. We see a lot of
We do,
people in
yeah.
spirituality that's like, oh, just think positive, right? Which is really toxic.
Yes.
If somebody is going through divorce, if someone is, in a, abusive relationship, whether it be physical or emotional, if someone just lost a loved one, it is not helpful to swoop in with positivity, right? And being in a high vibrational state actually does not mean you swoop in with that positivity,
Right.
really. And this kind of throws people when I tell them this, I'm going to share it, is that really when you swoop in instantly with that positivity, that's actually not high vibrational.
No.
that's actually pretty low vibrational, because it's your ego that is wanting to soothe them, make them feel better, and mitigate your own personal discomfort from their emotion.
Exactly.
The highest vibrational thing that you can do for someone is simply just hold energy, hold space for them, and be there with them, which does not require me lowering my vibration. It does
Right.
not require me to feel bad about it or be where they're at. Because again, it doesn't help either of us, right? And so if I do ever catch myself, with clients, I've got great boundaries. With friends, I've got great boundaries. But there are those couple people in my life that will occasionally reactivate something, or will, stir something back up within me. I just had this happen a couple of days ago, right? Like, that's when I have to know myself well enough to be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to step away from this and recalibrate myself. I'm going to get back to a better space. I'm going to step away from this conversation. Because listen, 2019 Travis, maybe even 2020 Travis would have been like, you know what? Today we match in energy today, right? But that's something I just choose not to do. And especially with helping people, right? Like, and not swooping in with the ego. That was a boundary I had to give myself. I had to ask myself, I'm like, why do I feel like I want to make people feel better right away? Because that's not helpful.
Right.
And they probably get annoyed, right? Like if somebody's going through some shit and you're like, oh my God, this happened for the best. This happened for the best, right? Like, so you could learn. It's like, bro, my mom just died. Like, what? Why are you telling me this, right?
Yeah.
That's not helpful ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. But I had to learn that the hard way though. I had to learn that by a couple of people being like, when I would swoop in, people were like, that's not helpful to me. But it's learnings, right?
I think people, and I did a video on this not too long ago about what toxic positivity actually is, because I had somebody ask me, I mentioned it on I think a live, and somebody was like, oh wait, what? Like, if I'm doing that, is that bad? And I'm like, okay, so let's chat here about what toxic
Yeah.
positivity is. Like, you can be positive and you can hold
Mhm.
space and you can have a high vibration and you can literally just sit with someone. Sometimes just sitting next to them and just staring off into space is kind of all they need, without negating their feelings. It's
Yeah.
when that positivity comes in and negates their feelings.
Mhm.
That's the toxic part. And I don't think people understand that. And they do it, like you said, in lieu of, let me help you. This is how I know how to help you, because
Mhm.
that's how people helped them when they were a kid. And that's how it's like a cycle. And I think
Yeah.
we're just now starting to see that it's not cool. It doesn't help anybody,
Yeah.
because at the
Yeah.
end you're like, oh yeah, I totally helped them. And then later you see that they're even worse. So then you feel
Yeah.
bad. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am that person that I do believe things happen for a reason, but I mean, I know things happen for a reason, but at the same time, I am not the person that it's like, oh, well, this is because you needed to learn this. I mean, karma is karma, but at the same time, something happening that shit is shit. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
I wish I could magically fix it for you. Like, I say that a lot. I'm like, I wish that I could just do that and everything is hunky dory, and I hate that I can't. But let me just hang out with you. Let me just sit with you. If
Yeah.
you need to talk or scream or cry or whatever. And one of the things I found that I do love to do, I deal a lot with people with grief. Um, One of the things that I absolutely love to do when I'm helping someone through grief is I want to hear their favorite memories of that person. Like, I'm
Mhm.
like, I want to know, like, what is the thing that touched you the most with this person? Or like,
Yeah.
what was the thing that has made you laugh the most? Like, I want to know this person.
Yeah.
I want you to introduce me to this person. Like, I want you to tell me all the fantastic things.
Mhm.
And I will let them talk for an hour or more
Mhm.
sometimes about, mom, grandma, dad, uncle, brother, all of those things. Like, I want to know this person. I didn't get the chance to
Mhm.
meet them in life. I want to know them now. And so just letting them talk about how
Mhm.
fantastic and how much they love this person, usually at the end, they're like, I really needed that. I just needed that.
Yeah.
So,
I love that so much. And you're so right. I think people just oftentimes just want to be seen. They just want their hurt to be seen.
yes.
they don't want us to fix it, right? Like as a practitioner, I've never felt one time like I needed to fix a client because I don't think any of my clients are broken. I think
Yeah.
that just like all of us, right? I think we are all wonderful. Doesn't mean we don't have wounding to work through or certain things to help, to heal. But overall, I don't think any of us are broken. But, I think with positivity, the other piece of that is if somebody is not vibrationally lined up to it yet, you're just going to sound like nails on a chalkboard, right?
Right.
Like if you look at someone, you're like, oh, your boyfriend dumped you, but you know what? This is just the best thing that could have happened to you. This is so for a reason. You're gonna find your next mate. You don't want to hear that. Like that's
Yeah.
literally gonna sound like nails on a chalkboard because you're not vibrationally lined up to that. So, or even just being completely, delusional. And I love some delusion. Don't get me wrong. But
I mean,
being
don't we
completely,
all as spiritual people?
yeah, but even just positivity in general sometimes is just such a far vibration away from where you currently are, right? And so it just doesn't even feel right a lot of the times to immediately go there. And so sometimes just telling someone, yeah, you know what, that does suck. That absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay that it sucks, right? But again, I think that I think the intention is good. The intention is there to help someone feel better. But truthfully, it's more times than not, it's always just us trying to not be uncomfortable with that person's
Right.
pain. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I think especially as kids, anytime feel like I'm going to sneeze, I'm like, please don't sneeze right now. Anytime I'm sure past the 90s, if you grew up anytime in there, it's like, okay, okay. So you're having a feel and I don't know how to deal with said feel. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna come at it like one of a couple of ways, like either the toxic positivity or
Mm-hmm.
the rub some dirt on it, you'll be all right, things like that. You'll be okay, it makes you stronger. Or I'm just gonna leave. Like I'm not comfortable
Yeah.
here. So I'm gonna jet, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
home. I think that's the way that people dealt with things for so long. And so a lot of older people, especially, are having to relearn how to handle that because the younger generation
Mm-hmm.
is like, no, 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 we're going to talk about my shit. Like, I want to talk about my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of can't wait to see how the people that are teenagers now are as adults. I
Yeah.
really can't. I really can't
Yeah.
wait because
Yeah.
most of them don't hold shit back whenever
Yeah.
they have a feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's
Well,
fantastic.
yeah. And just on the note of, of soothing other humans, right? Like we are able to sit in the depth of emotion with other people in which we're able to sit with our own emotion. So if someone's listening and if your instinct really is to like rush in and start helping people, I would just ask yourself, do I feel comfortable sitting with my own emotion? Because for me, it wasn't until I was comfortable really sitting with my shit that I could really sit with someone who is like sobbing, breaking down, crying, and sit there and be present and not hand them a tissue. I mean, I'll hug someone if they're crying, if we're right up close, right? But not swoop in with the answer, not swoop in with the, well, this is all for the betterment of your soul, Pat, whatever,
Yeah,
BS we throw in there. Right. And so it wasn't until I could sit with my own stuff that I was able to sit with other people and their stuff.
I think that is an amazing point. I think that's an amazing point. And it takes a lot of dealing with your own bullshit, your own shadow work. And I mean, most of it's just bullshit, but
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of that to be able to actually be present in the moment. That's one of the things I love talking about is
Yeah.
being present in the moment. And
Yeah.
even if you practice it as you can practice as much as you want, you're still going to find yourself out of the moment at times. So I don't want people to think like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I've got to get to that point. No, like as meat sacks, we can't. Like we're always gonna, did I leave the stove on? Like, does my dog actually have food? Like
Yeah.
things like that, even though we know we just fed the dog. But I love to, and talking about that and learning how to be present with the person that's right there. Sometimes that can bring up old traumas as well when you are looking at
Mhm.
someone that you care about that is grieving or upset. And
Mhm.
then it starts in you to bring up oh, I didn't deal with that. Or
Mhm.
something, one of the things that I found that happens with me is like something will reemerge and I'll be like, I didn't react to that the way I would have, like
Mhm.
pre 2004 me would have been like, oh yeah, bitch, like, whoa, but now I'm like, okay, this kind of made me feel a little triggered because XYZ. And it's okay that I feel that way. And here's this. But then later I find that there's something else in there, that the reason I was re-triggered by this is because, okay, now here's the underlying part that you haven't dealt with
Mhm.
yet. So
Mhm.
is that how it seems to work for you? Or when these things
Mhm.
reemerge, you go, oh, I just band-aided that.
Yeah. You know what? I think that it's such a good question. It's actually, I've been thinking about this morning. Just funny how the universe works, right? Like, I don't get that so much with clients. Like, clients, I'm in a different energetic space. It's always
Right.
people in my personal life.
Yes. Same.
And so I had a situation come up with someone very close to me who, one of their defaults is when they're upset, lashing out, calling names, and they said some pretty hurtful things and re-triggered stuff from like my childhood. Now, here's what's great. This is because in those moments I have to like step back and just kind of observe what's happening, right? The very first thing I observed was, oh my gosh, I'm telling this person we can absolutely have a conversation. I'm so sorry that you're hurting right now. You can't call me names. And I'm setting firm and loving boundaries. Meanwhile, they're still coming at me, calling me selfish, calling me self-centered, all
Yeah.
of these things, right? Telling me they don't know who I am anymore. And which is
Yeah.
totally fine. It's not triggering me. Like I'm receiving this energy, or this energy is coming at me and I'm not receiving it. I'm not taking it in.
Yeah.
And the very first thing that I acknowledged was, um, you know, when I am triggered, I have this like, to me, it's like a guard dog. It's like a Doberman that will come out and bite your head off. Right.
I mean, you're an
And
earth sign, so
yeah, but that didn't happen. Like normally my instinct is like, you're coming at me with this, get ready, because I'm about to make you cry. Right. And it didn't
right.
happen. What happened first was a loving and firm boundary
Yeah.
that did not cut the person off. I didn't tell the person I never want to talk to you again, right? Because I would also be very like, I never want to talk to you again. This is it. This relationship's over. We're done. And so, that's the first time that I've been kind of reactivated since I've been doing some deeper healing as of lately. But I think sometimes in our life, Bodhi, we do have to triage something. We do have to just stop the
Mhm.
bleeding. And we don't see that we triaged it until later. And then
Right.
it comes up again and it's like, okay, my meditation's not working. My spiritual practice isn't working. I'm trying to find a better feeling, but I'm still like really stuck here, which I think is such a blessing when those things come up, because this, trauma wound is brought back up again that I definitely triaged with this person. And now I've got this amazing opportunity to find another path that I want to take for myself and my healing.
Mhm.
I get to explore another option for myself. I get to like really heal it, which is so
Right.
good. And I think sometimes when you're just kind of triaging things, the work seems really daunting, because it's like at this point I'm just stopping the bleeding. I'm not actually healing
Yeah.
anything.
Yep.
I'm just making sure I don't lose the limb.
Yeah. Put pressure on the wound.
Right. But I think sometimes in our life, like that's what we have to do, because we don't have the tools yet, or we haven't
Right.
met the teacher or the therapist or the spiritual guide or heard the podcast, whatever it is that's going
Yeah.
to help us really get there. And so in the meantime, it just needs a band-aid, and then it's going to come back around if it's band-aided, absolutely. But then you're going to get this beautiful opportunity to really go in and do some deeper work, and it's going to be beautiful.
So do you feel like when things are band-aided and they come back around, I mean, my personal opinion is that, okay, I just threw a band-aid on this, a little
Mhm.
tourniquet, we tied it with a belt and we, went on, because I wasn't ready to deal with
Mhm.
that yet. I
Mhm.
was not in a place where I was able to actually wrap my whole self around, this is actually the deeper issue here. So
Mhm.
have you found that with yourself?
Absolutely. Because this thing that's kind of come up in my life in this perfect divine timing is a chance for me. So I'll share a little bit of this. So I love to get readings. I love it so much. I love, even as a practitioner, I will sit and get readings and I will just look in awe and wonder at the practitioner in front of me, because I think this work is so beautiful. And
See, I don't. I'm very careful about who I let read me.
well, so that's true. No. I'm very careful, right? Like, I'm not just like anybody and everybody, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's definitely
yeah.
an energy thing. But if I find that person where I'm like, okay, my energy is aligned here, I'm getting an okay from my guides. It's really more of what I meant. Like, okay, I'm getting the okay, let's do this. And then I'm
Yeah.
just like the whole time, I'm like eyes wide, I've got my hands on my chin, and I'm just like, this is amazing, right? And
Yeah,
because I know I'm there for a reason with that person. Like, I know that
right.
that person has a message for me that I'm going to take, and it's going to be another piece of my journey. And so I always get excited. But for months, and I tell you months, I have been hearing, you need to show up more. You need to show up more. And I'm like, I'm on social media. Like, I've got, like, between Instagram and the Tiki Tacky, I've got like 700,000 followers. Like, I'm
Yeah,
very authentic with it. I tell people what I do.
yeah.
Like, I'm showing up. What do you mean I need to show up more as myself? I had my aura photo taken
Mm-hmm.
over the weekend, which I showed you, which I was so excited about. And even the aura lady was like, she was like, you're moving out this old programming that says that you can't be who you are, and you're bringing in new programming that it says that your voice is enough, that who you are exactly as you are is enough. And I'm like, okay, this message again, why does this message keep coming up? Trauma reactivation.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma reactivation happens, and I'm sitting, I'm in my kitchen, I'm cooking, I'm not even paying attention to anything. I'm like, I'm in my zone, I'm just cooking. And then all of a sudden it hits me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got some couple projects I want to put out and a couple things I want to do, but I've been procrastinating on them. Why am I procrastinating? Oh, I'm afraid if I do them. And then and then I was and then I did a live mediumship event in Denver. And before I went out on that stage, I hid in the bathroom and cried before I went out on the stage.
Oh,
And it wasn't like, I'm so grateful to be here, tears. It was a little bit of that, but then some of it was like, oh God, tears, right? Like, what am I doing?
yeah.
And I got on the stage and it was amazing. But both of those things, the procrastinating, the crying, I was afraid of being seen. I
Okay.
was so afraid of being seen and people seeing me. And I realized this trauma has come up because this person in my life, they never saw me.
Yeah.
They even said, I don't even know who you are anymore, right? Which means you never saw
Yeah.
me to begin with.
Yeah.
And so this is a chance for me to really not go into what I had triaged at the time. Didn't know I was triaging it, did my very best, right? But now looking back, like, okay, there actually really is some deeper healing going on
Mm-hmm.
to happen here. And this has been where I have been with my love life and dating, how I show up to my friendships, how I show up in the world, is just this allowing myself to really be seen. And it's interesting because it's happening like bit by bit, right? It's not that I'm not doing the
Yeah.
work and I'm not showing up. I absolutely am, but it's like more and more and more, right? And
Right.
so for me, this is the beautiful lesson of, okay, like, this is coming up because this is a person who one of my first memories of rejection was
Yeah.
this person, and not being loved, one of the first people to bully me, one of the first people. This person loves me fiercely, and I know this,
Yeah.
but I've adapted these thoughts as my own thoughts and my own
Right.
programming, right? And so this is me deprogramming that. And now I get this beautiful chance to sit with the fullness of who I am and not being afraid of that being rejected, and show up. And I'm so excited.
I love that you're able to work back through some of those things. And I'm glad that you shared a little bit too, because I think that people assume that their problems, when especially when they're younger, nobody understands. Nobody's been where
Mhm.
I'm at, you know, even if, you know, we're kind of the same and we've had the same kind of background, the same kind of parenting, the same kind of growing up, you know, well, you still don't understand where I'm at.
Mhm.
But when we start to share those things with other people and they go, oh my God, you have those moments where you're like, I have the same thing. And you kind of
Yeah.
think for a minute, like, holy shit, like I've got to deal with that. Like I didn't
Yeah.
realize that I was
Yeah.
just glossing over this. And I'll tell you just from my personal experience, just because I've been in this cycle for so long, like there's a cycle when it comes to any type of spiritual journey. And I tell people like it's not a perfect circle. It's literally
Mm-mm.
like a 2-year-old
Mm-mm.
writing cursive. Some days you're going to be over
Yeah.
here and some days you're going to be here and some days you might be the dot on whatever eye that you think that was. But we go back into those dark nights of the soul so many times, and I always tell people like this: you have to look at the dark night of the soul and these re-triggering, these things coming back up as a hallway.
Mhm.
Because without a hallway, you can't get from
Mhm.
the kitchen to the bedroom. You can't get to the front door. You can't go anywhere. If you have no
Yeah.
hallway, you can't
Yeah.
go anywhere. And I always tell people this too. When you look back at that time when you were in this void, in this hallway, in this trauma that has come back up where you were like, "Oh, that Band-Aid did not hold," like, "Oh shit."
Mhm.
When you look back at that, and when you're in it, it sucks. Like you're kind of like,
Mhm.
"Oh shit,"
Mhm.
like, "Ugh," and you beat yourself up. But when you look back at it, you go, "Man, I can't believe how much I grew in a period of a couple months or a couple weeks or whatever it was."
Mhm.
When you look back at those times, they're some of the best parts of the journey, even though they're the hardest. And when I point that out to people, I'm like, I want you to think back at like the last time you really had that dark night of the soul where you just, I'm going to be a hermit and shut myself in my house and I want to talk to anybody and I'm processing through some shit. And all of the things that you realized, all the epiphanies you had, all of the people that were there for you, the people that weren't there for you, like
Mhm.
go back through and look at all of that and
Yeah.
look at where you came out on the other end. You have to
Yeah.
claw to get to that plateau, and then you come out like Heidi in the Field of Flowers, with the dress and all the thing. But I don't think people give that journey as much beauty as it really has. I
Yeah.
think for me, and looking back at some of the darkest times I've personally experienced, that's what makes me who I am. It's what's made me who
Mhm.
I am now. It's what allows me to identify with people, to help people, to be present and listen when somebody is breaking down and saying, I don't want to be here anymore. Like
Mhm.
I is one of the suicide awareness is a massive, massive thing to me because it's touched my life so much. And so when people say that, a lot of people get uncomfortable. They don't know how to handle it because they're
Mhm.
like, that it's a trigger. They're like, I don't know how to handle this. Or they start talking about this person or that person or whatever. But my own personal experience and appreciating those experiences helps me to sit with that person and helps me
Mhm.
to know the things to ask them and know what
Yeah.
to say. Not always, because there's sometimes I'm like, I don't really know what to say. So let's just hang out, like let's just be
Yeah.
here. So, do you find that you gravitate toward, or more of your clients gravitate toward you that have some of the same experiences that you had?
I think, at first, yes, because I was still like very much like when I say like in the thick, not to imply that I'm not doing healing work now, I absolutely am. The
Yeah.
healing work though,
Oh no, you never stop.
I did right, exactly. I had a different relationship with the healing work then, like it would just kind of consume me and take over. And, now it's like I equate doing healing work to like watching a scary movie. Like I would watch the movie Halloween with Michael Myers. It would terrify me. And now I watch it, I'm like, I can watch it before bed, fine, no stress response, right? Like, so it's kind of like doing the work. The first couple of times it's terrifying, but then eventually it's like, oh, I really like this movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
so,
You start to
so
pick apart the
yeah,
props and stuff like
yeah. Occasionally, yes, I will get someone who's kind of like in alignment with what I'm getting. And I think the universe definitely lines that up for a reason. And I, you know, at first it was a lot. Now it's kind of like all over the place with clients that I get, but I do love when the universe lines me up with someone who is in a very similar situation vibrationally as I am in my personal life, because messages come through and I'm like, I'll be like making notes like, and I'm writing that down for me to remember later, so yeah. I love how
love
that
that.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, it always cracks me up when that happens too. I do the same thing. I'll be like, oh, you got called on your bullshit. Like if I'm writing notes, I'll write, this is your bullshit, like
Yeah.
that's how I identify it to myself. Like the universe just was like, bitch, I see what you're doing. So
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that too, because people don't understand that either. It's not just a one and done thing. Like you're going to do shadow work the rest
Mhm.
of your life. You're going to
Mhm.
continually be changing and shifting and healing, and your vibration is going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go sideways, it's going to go to Africa, it's going to go to China, it's going to come back, and you're not even going to recognize it after a while. But
Yeah.
it's awesome at the same time. Like I think one thing too that I've personally found is that the longer you're in this realm and the longer you do this and the longer you grow, the shifts that you experience when your vibe kind of does the boomerang and comes back to you, and you're like, I don't know what that is, but okay, this is what we're doing now. You find yourself in such interesting vibrational places that you never thought was possible, and two, you're kind of
Mhm.
like, and now I don't know where to go. And so you get on this like stuck moment until the universe brings you another client like that that's like, all right, here's your bullshit again that you're ignoring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know we've been on here for a little bit, but I want to quickly touch, because I think this is a good gateway
Mhm.
into what we were talking about before we started talking about this. Travis and I had a conversation before I started recording, and I even said I should be recording right now. We were talking about how what we do, and as social media personalities, I don't like saying celebrity because I don't feel like a celebrity. And Travis kind of was like, I really identify that word either, about how that's shifted and changed his life, my life. And I know I've talked to other people, actors, I've talked to other social media personalities and so on, and how interesting it is that people see us. And one of the things that I was going to bring up before, and I was like, wait till you're recording, is this, and I want your take on it. I have a lot of interesting friends. I have a lot of friends that are actors. And I watch at conventions and stuff how people interact with them, and then how people interact with me and with other social media people that are there with me. So when they're talking to an actor, they do the fangirl, they're kind of in awe, and they do these things, but they know there's a boundary there. Like it's really funny.
Mhm.
They know
Mhm.
there's a boundary there. Like I see this
Mhm.
person on a screen and they're an actor and they're untouchable. And I'm going to tell you guys that most of the actors I know are like absolutely normal people. Like I know
Mhm.
y'all won't believe that, but some of them I'm like, oh my God, what
I
the
love
fuck
that.
came out of your face? But when I see them deal with me and with other social media personalities, they still kind of have that fangirl moment, but they want to sit and talk to us and they want to
Yeah.
be part of us. And my assistant Sass, she always jokes about selling my bath water, which I think is crazy, and it's not truly bath water. Let me put that disclaimer on there, y'all. It's just it's a gag gift, okay? But when we joked about that and we put that on the website, so many of them sold, and I was like, what are you bitches doing right now? Like, oh my God, we had to put a thing on there like, don't drink this, it's just tap water, but don't drink it. I mean, you probably shouldn't drink tap water anyway. But what I find is interesting is how people treat you when you're accessible. They
Yeah.
feel that you're a celebrity, that you're accessible. So we talked a little bit about, I had an epiphany this morning where I follow someone on TikTok, and I just see them when they come across my For You, but I caught myself worrying about this person because they had surgery this weekend. And when I saw them say, hey, I'm good, I'm healing, I'm good, like I wanted to cry. And then I wanted to like mom hug them, like, friend, I'm so glad you're okay. We didn't talk about this part yet, but have you experienced that with someone that you follow on social media? Or have you met
Oh
someone that you follow on social media?
my gosh. Yeah. So, well, not a social media person, but like when Tina Turner transitioned over into non-physical a couple weeks ago, I bawled my eyes out. As far as social media people go, there was actually one person who I met. It was so funny. I don't know if this would be in your algorithm or not, but they're a creator who does these videos like they're a Sephora employee. And
No, but I apparently need
it's
to
a,
find this.
and she does these amazing videos, and she does this like maniacal kind of like laugh. She'll go like, like in the video. It's kind of like just the, just the customer service employee, like not taking shit from the customer, which I totally love.
Right,
And
right.
so there are these great videos and they're so funny. And I was out dancing at one of my favorite clubs and I turned around and there she is. And like, I walk up to her and I was like, I fangirled. I was like, I watch your video. Cause like I sit there and, and like she makes me laugh and I'll put up these videos when I just want like a laugh. And there was another creator. I keep seeing these people in nightclubs, but another creator, same club, not the same night, who I met. I was like, oh my God, it's so good to see you in real life. Like, right? Because you get that kind of that celebrity effect. Like you only existed here,
Yeah.
but now you're here. And I think it's
Oh
really
my God, you're
great.
a person.
Yeah, like, oh my God, you're real, right? I even had friends who, not necessarily social media folks, but we met online through a meetup group, and it's this spiritual community in Denver. And I met a couple of them in person for the first time after talking to them for like, 2 years of like Zoom meetings and Instagram posts and all these things, right? And I see them in real life. I'm like, my brain had to be like processed, like, wait, you're not something we made up, like you're real, right? And so it is interesting. I've never had the moment that you had where I was concerned, or was concerned about their health. Thankfully, I don't think I've followed anyone that I know of that had like big health problems like that. But I totally get the I don't know, you see someone's content and they create it and they're telling their story. You just feel a part of their story, even though you have nothing to do
Right,
with it.
right. I I've come to the realization that, and not just today, not just an epiphany today, but I've come to the realization that it shows you it shows you lives that are the same and different than yours at the same time.
Mhm.
It allows you to be part of people's lives that that's your dream life. Like I
Mhm.
have to remind myself, one of the things I remind myself when my vibe gets really low and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, why I'm like, fuck this, fuck that, blah, 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 and I get in
Yeah.
that mode. I have to literally, like, I'll do this and I'll tap my fingers or something. And I'm like, dude, you have a life that most people would love to have. Like they
Mhm.
would cut off an arm to have the life that you have. Like, stop it. And just thinking about that. And then I'm like, oh yeah, like I was telling my kid that
Penny. My name is
So that was fun. I guess I'll just edit that a little bit back because I got cut out of Zoom. I have no idea what's going on. And it's like, I can't even get messages or things to send right now. And like I have all